Welcome to the EvoCloud video tutorial series. In this video, we will cover how to work with images in your website and the EvoCloud CMS. This video and all of the training videos in the series are brought to you by EvoGov.com. We build websites for local government agencies from across the USA. So let's get started. What we're going to cover today are these topics: the different types of images that you'll encounter that you should use in your website, and some image types that you probably should not use in your website. We'll cover how each of those image types are affected in the CMS and in the website. How to upload images into the media library of your CMS. Editing images using the special tools in the media library itself. Inserting images into pages and other content. Floating your images right, left, and center, and how to create margins. The drag and drop method of putting images directly in the editor and why it's probably not the best method. The image button on the toolbar and what it's used for to your images. Adding alt tags to your images for ADA compliance. And lastly, making a pop-up with your images. So I'm going to jump into the CMS itself and start on topic number 1, which is the different types of images that you'll encounter when you're adding them to your website. Overall, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but it is important to recognize when you have an image that is a good candidate for your website and one that is not. So overall, there's 2 types of images that you'll encounter. One is a bitmap image, and an image that's a bitmap is basically a photograph where information on every pixel is stored in the image file itself. You'll notice that if you've ever scaled an image up and it becomes blurry, that's because it's more than likely a photograph where your image editing software had to guess what the pixels were in between the existing pixels when you made the photo larger. And that's a challenge when making photographs larger, is that it sometimes can become blurry. A vector image, by contrast, doesn't store data on every pixel. Instead, the image is actually drawn with math. These are typically not photographs. They're basically logos, fonts, gradients, and shapes. So you'll find these in logos or banners or vehicle wraps or any other original artwork file that includes drawings. So typically when we get an image from an organization for their logo, if it's something that's been drawn and doesn't have photography in the logo, it's typically a vector image. The common bitmap image types that you'll find are the .png files. That stands for Portable Network Graphics. And those came onto the scene back in 2004. They're very, very popular today. It's probably the most used image type for websites other than JPEGs. And the PNG files replaced GIF files or GIF files, the graphic interchange format that first started in 1987. And the reason for that is back in 1999, there were patents enforced on GIF files that impacted software companies that use GIF files in their software. So instead of paying for a giant patent, there was an open source format PNG that replaced it. The other kind of bitmap file that's you'll run into probably most often when you're taking photos with your phone or with a digital camera is a JPEG, and that stands for Joint Photographic Experts Group. Whether it's a JPG or a JPEG, pretty much the same. They'll both work the same. And JPEG, the best way to think about a JPEG is it's a type of compression for photography. So let's say you're in Photoshop or some photo editing software and you want to save out a photograph as a JPEG. Whenever you do that, you'll be greeted with a bunch of options for how much compression you wish to use with your photographs. Moving on. Other types of image files that you'll encounter: a TIFF file. Typically, we don't want to see these in websites. A TIFF file is a raw image file that comes right out of a digital camera, a high-end digital camera, like a 35 millimeter camera. And these files can be enormous. They can be 30 megs or more per image. I have seen customers try to put these into websites. It's a really bad idea. Again, it's really just to have a lossless type of image that doesn't have any compression in it whatsoever. So digital photographers that want to take an original image and get the maximum resolution may take photographs in that format, but they'll need further work before you use them in the website because it would just be too slow. The other file type here, AI, that's Adobe Illustrator. You don't want to use these in your website, but when we're gathering content from customers that have original artwork, a lot of times we'll get those as an EPS or an Illustrator file. That's a program file, and you need Adobe Illustrator to open it. So it really has no place in your website, except for the fact that for original artwork, we can use those to generate any kind of file. An EPS is a vector image, again, drawn with math. So if you remember back up here, we talked about logos, banners, and artwork that are drawn with math. An EPS, if we get an EPS image, you can scale it to any size, and it will be razor sharp and look fantastic. And that's one of the benefits of a vector image. We look at those as pretty much source images that we get of original artwork that we then save out maybe a PNG from to use on the website. A scalable vector graphic is also very similar to an EPS. They're used for animations and icons. A lot of the icons that you see in the sites we build for buttons and things start out as SVG images. We have a shortcut in the CMS for putting icons into your website, and that's just a little bit out of the scope of this video, but you may see those. But these are the three types that you really want to use in your website. Lastly, the difference between resampling and resizing. This is a common customer mistake that, since I'm showing you how to use images in your website, it's a really good time to talk about so you can avoid this mistake. Usually when we see this happen, what happens is a customer will upload an enormous image into their web pages, both in file size and dimensions. So it's an image that's just way too big to use in the website. They'll grab the corner of the image and make the image smaller and hit save and load it into their web pages. Will it work? Yes. Is it ideal? No. That's resizing the image. And all it really does is change the output dimensions of the image. But that giant file that you placed into the page is still there. So basically your web page is next to useless on mobile at that point. The alternative is to resample images. In other words, let's say you start off with a raw camera photo and it's really, really large, and we want to shrink it down to less than 1,000 pixels, which is about the width of most web pages. Well, when you shrink it down in a program like Photoshop and then save it out as that new native size, that let's say it's 1,000 pixels wide, you resampled the image. You made a new image that's now natively a different size. And if you're shrinking it, obviously you're probably making the file size much smaller, which is good for the web. The good news here is that the tools that I'm going to show you when you place an image into your web pages with the methods I show you in this video, we're actually resampling and sharpening photos on the fly using tools in the back end of the website. So we can simplify this for you. And this is great because you can upload a large photo into the media library. When it comes time to place that image into a web page, you choose the size you want, and our software does all the rest of the work and basically drops it right into the site after resampling it. So I'm going to show you how that works. Now, we talked about a menu of topics that we're going to cover, and we just talked about image types. So we're going to move on to number 2, which is uploading images into the media library. Now, the way you do that is you can open up any page. I'm in a page here in this website. Right now, it has very little content. It just has the types of images that we talked about. But I want to get an image into this web page, and the first step is to place the image in the media library. Well, how do we do that? You could go to Files and Media Library at the top, but there's a much better way. If we're working on content, like in this case a page, we can just hit the media button right here. And what that's going to do is bring up a pop-up that is a window to the media library. And this is live, so everything that's available to us with our security is shown here in this pop-up window. I made a folder for training. Here it is. And in this folder, I dragged an image from my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this image and do it once again so you can see how I got it in there. So it's loaded the image. This is a pretty huge image, and I deleted it. So on my computer, and it doesn't matter if you're using a Mac or a PC, it really does not matter. Obviously, I'm on a Mac, and I've got an image here. It's Yosemite National Park. It's a JPEG, and it's a photograph. So that makes sense. We're going to use that in the website. That's a good file format, and it's pretty large. 2.5 megabytes is a pretty large image, to use on a website. We're typically trying to get images that are less than 500K, let's say. So let's drag this image into the pop-up and let go. And you'll see a progress bar that's green here at the bottom, and then it uploads it into the folder. And it was pretty fast. I'm on a good internet connection here with a fast computer, so it only took a few seconds. And now we see the image in the media library. So that's all that really takes to get a file into the media library. You can also drag multiple files in. If you click and use the Shift key on your keyboard, you can select multiple files and drag them into a folder, and they will all upload at once. The maximum file size is pretty large. You can go hundreds of megabytes with files in our CMS. There's not really a hard limitation on that. And it is possible to have multi-gigabyte files, but for photographs, obviously, that's less than ideal. That's not what we're looking for. So that's one way to upload files. Another way is the drag and drop method. We're going to cover that in a minute. So going back to our agenda, uploading images. We just uploaded an image into the media library. That's number 2. And now we're going to edit that image using the media library. So let's see what that's all about. Now, I'm still editing the page. I haven't really put the image in. That's coming. We're going to do that. But let's just go back to the media library for a minute. Go to the training folder. There's our image. Now, you'll see there's a pencil icon here, and that's how we can edit the image. So let's click on that. And this will take a moment to load. Again, it's a pretty large image. And what's happening right now is it's loading an image processing engine that we have in the CMS. We'll see the native resolution of the image down here at the bottom, the height and the width, in this case, or width and height, right? So that's the size in pixels of the image as it is right now, and that's a very, very large image. The largest image that you would probably use in your website would be about 2,000 pixels wide for a background image. So this is way bigger than that, and that's great. If we're starting with an image that's large, it's much easier to reduce an image than it is to make it larger. But what other options do we have here to edit this image? Well, we can rotate it. And if I click the rotate button here and I click the button to rotate it, you'll see that it rotates it fairly quickly. Again, 2.5 meg image, it takes a moment, but it's really doing that in our computer. It's not even talking to the server. So this is a similar technology to Instagram. Now, unless I save it, it's not going to save the new orientation. I can rotate it back. Let's just do that real quick. Also, there's a restore option here on the end, and that allows you to restore an image back to its original state. So even if we were to, say, crop this image, and let's just do it. I'm going to crop it, drag the little box here, and we can crop it down to just one portion of it. Hit the crop button. We'll see what happens. And you'll see there's a before and after pixel size. Now the native size of the image is just about 1,500 pixels wide, right? So we've modified the image, and if I hit save, that'll become the new default for that image. And you can see even the preview here, it's smaller now. If we hit edit once again, and I decide, oh my gosh, I never should have cropped that. I want to make it, get it back to its original state. We can hit restore, hit the button. This will go fetch a backup of the image and restore it back to its original size. If we edit it once again, you'll see that we'll be back to 5,000 pixels here in a second when that pops up. So there it is. We've got our original image back. So that's a nice handy feature that prevents us from damaging the image. I crop the image. You can flip it horizontally or vertically, and you can also scale an image in percentage or in actual physical pixel sizes if you like. So this isn't meant to replace Photoshop or more advanced editing tools. This is a way to very quickly crop images, resize them natively here in the file manager. But don't forget, as you're going to see, when you insert images, we can resize them as we're inserting them. So it would be best to leave your original artwork at its full size here in the media library and not focus too much on going in and resizing everything when you upload them. All right. So we're on to topic number 4, which is inserting images into pages and content. How do we do that? Well, when we hovered over the image, you saw the pencil icon for editing it. You'll see a plus sign here to the right to insert this image into whatever it is that we're doing from this pop-up into the content, right? So we're editing a page in the background here. We have this pop-up open. I hit the plus sign, and then we're greeted with a list of options here on the right. At the bottom, it will always show what the native resolution of the image is. It will never give you an option to insert it larger than the native resolution. So if this, let's say this image was only, I don't know, 600 pixels wide, everything below 640 here, everything above 640 would be grayed out, and you'd only have the options here below it. In this case, it's so big, we have lots of options. We have basically full page width, which we call extra, extra large, all the way down to a tiny thumbnail image. For everyday content in the website, I'd probably go with just the large size here, 768 pixels wide. And these image sizes are basically designed around different browser types and device types, like a small iPad would be about that size. So let's hit insert. And wherever our icon was, our cursor was in the content, it now inserts that image at 760 some pixels wide, right? So we can hit save, update the page. And just to prove that it really made a new image and it didn't just change the dimensions, we can go preview this page. So let's do it. I'm going to go back. We had that open in another tab. I can hit refresh, and we should see our image appear. There it is. Now, if you right click on this and you want to open that in a new tab, I can do that pretty easily. I'm just going to copy the image location and open a new tab and hit enter. Okay, so we can see here now that is the native size. It's not 5,000 pixels wide. If I were to save this to just my downloads folder, let's just do that real quick. And I take a look at my downloads folder. Let me just bring it up. Curious what this size looks like. All right. So here we can see at that size with the color tables and the resolution of this image, it saved it out as 821K. So that's quite a bit smaller than the 2.5 megs that we were dealing with earlier. This is all really great news. So what happened was we hit media, we browse to the folder that we wanted to. If the image isn't already there, you can drag a new one up from your desktop. We hit the plus sign, we chose the size that we wanted, we hit insert, and then the system automatically dropped the image into the page, resampled it to give us new dimensions, and it sharpened it so it looks really good. And that's how you insert images into pages. Pretty easy. That works everywhere in the CMS. It works in everything from forms to FAQs to working on your department's homepage. It works everywhere. All right. Moving on, we're up to number 5, which is floating images and how to deal with margins. So let's take a look at that. So we've got this image in our site. Maybe we want this to float right instead of being to the left. We could right click on the image, okay, and then go to image properties, and this will give you a pop-up. There's some things to note about this pop-up, so let's talk about it for a minute. If you hit this little refresh icon here, it will go fetch the native dimensions of it if you're curious what the dimensions are. You can put a border on the image. If I put a 4 pixel, well, let's just do a 4 pixel border on it. It gives you a preview of how thick that border is going to be. We can hit OK, and you'll see that it put a border on it. If we want to float it, the alignment is down here left or right. Now, one thing to note with this is that if you float it left or right, the text is going to wrap around it. And it may not be exactly what you want, but let's see what happens. So I'm going to float it right, hit OK, and it floated it to the right. If I were to drag this image to the top of my content, you'll see what happens. It floats it to the right, and it forces the content of the page to wrap around it. Let's save the page, update it, and then go take a look and just see what happens with this. What does it look like? So there we go. And it's maybe not the best because it floated it to the right. We have our border, but the text is very close. We really don't want the text to hit that. So how do we deal with margins on that? Well, this is kind of a bummer because in the past, you would just right click, go to image properties, and set a horizontal spacing. And you could do that here. Unfortunately, the horizontal spacing and the vertical spacing tags that you see here have been deprecated. What that means is that most modern browsers ignore those tags now, and it's done with styles instead. We intend to make this a little bit easier by ripping these out of the editor and putting our own custom fields in here. But for now, I'm just going to show you kind of an expert way to do it. And don't get too scared here. It's not going to be too terrible with code or anything. But if I click on the source button here in the top left, it shows me the code of the page. And at the very top, we'll see an image tag right there. That's our image. It's got a description, an alt tag, and it's got a some other data here. And then we see the source, which is the URL that it's grabbing the image from. So this is the exact URL where it's pulling the image out of our media library. Over here to the side, you'll see styles, and it has the width and height already set, a border style, and float right. You can see all of that right there. If you were to just click before that closing parentheses and type margin colon 20px semicolon, that's it, and hit and come out of source view, you'll now see that we have a margin. Let's go update it, and then just refresh the page, and we should see, yep, now we've got a nice 20 pixel margin. It's also using it for the right, top, and bottom. There are separate style tags you can put in for margin dash top, margin dash bottom, margin dash right, margin dash left. If you just type margin colon 20px semicolon, this is the effect you'll get, and it's more or less what we want. Now, let's say I wanted to have several images and space them out, maybe in a table. Let's see how we would do that. So I'm going to delete the image. I'll put it here at the top, the cursor at the top, hit enter a couple of times, and then we can insert a quick table that's 3 rows, 2 columns. Maybe let's just do 3 columns, 1 row, and width 100%. And no border on this. So put a 0 for the border and hit OK. Now we've got a table up here. Actually, that's not what I wanted. Let me just back that up and do that again. So insert table. I want 1 row with 3 columns and a width of 100% and border size 0. Let's try that again. Hit OK. All right, there we go. So here's a table with 3 cells in it. You can actually click in the cell, and then we can put an image in it, right? So let's try that. We're going to go back to that same folder, add the image. This time I'm going to go with a very small, I don't know, 180 pixels. Let's insert it. And just for the sake of demonstration, I'll click it to select it and just hit Control C to copy it, Control V to paste, Control V to paste. And now we've got images in each cell. We could center those, right? Just click in there and use the center paragraph button, and now we've got those 3 centered. So that's another way to space out images, any way you want. They don't have to be the same image. I just use the same image to save time here. But tables are another way to enhance your layouts with content. They don't have to just have they don't simply have to have images in them. You could actually highlight all of the text here, cut it, and then paste it, and you'll see the text can be in there as well. Instead of that being centered, maybe we want the text to be left justified. So there's another option. And then if you want these images at the top of the cells, you could right-click, go to the cell properties for this cell, and say vertical alignment top, okay, and then pushes the image to the top. So there you go. That's just another way to lay out your images the way that you'd like in your web page using tables. All right. The next item on our list of things to cover is the drag and drop method and why it's not great. Item number 6 here. So what we mean by that is you can actually drag and drop images into pages without even using the media library. But there's a catch. I'm going to show you what happens. So I just hit enter a bunch of times to make some space down here at the bottom. And on my computer, I've got file manager here. Just my file browser. And I need to go and find, let me get it real quick, just the documents, my training folder. Okay, so here's my folder with my image in it. Now, I don't have the media pop-up open. I'm just in the editor, right? I can take that image, drag it in and let go. And you'll notice that the editor itself will allow you to just upload that image. But look at how big it is. This is 5,000 pixels wide. And this is where people get into trouble. They drag images directly in. They see the image that's so big and they say, oh my gosh, this is way too big. And they just change the dimensions of it. That's exactly why it's probably not a good idea. Unless your images are exactly the size you want to begin with, it's probably not a good idea to drag them into just into the editor. And there's another reason why this is troublesome too. I'll show you. Let's just update it. And what I'm going to do now is go look at the page, refresh it. Okay, so we've got our table up top here. Remember this image was just centered vertically in the center. This one's vertically adjusted to the top. Here's that giant image. See how big it is? Huge, right? Huge image. Well, if we were to look at these two images, which were entered with the media library, and let's just copy that image location and open it in another tab. Let's see what it looks like. Well, if you look at the URL here, it's the site domain that we're in, the media library. Then we're in the training folder, and then there's the name of the image. So it's pretty logical, this path, right? If we were to go back and look at the one we just dragged in, what does that path look like? Well, if I right click it, copy image location, go and take a peek at that, notice that we've got the same domain. We're in the media library, but here's the catch. It just dumps the image into an uploads folder, a generic folder that's inside the media library that we make automatically. Why is that a problem? Because with the other images, I knew exactly where to go to get them. I put them into the training folder. But if you just drag an image into the content, it's going to put it in kind of this dumping ground of uploads. So later, when you're trying to replace that image or find it in the media library, you're going to have a really hard time because you'll be sorting around with hundreds or thousands of other images that other people in your organization, other editors, just dragged into web pages as well. So again, you can drag images directly into editors. However, we don't recommend it because it will just place all of those images into one folder in the media library and it'll become hard to manage. So a better, just to recap, a better method is instead of just dragging it in, if it's a brand new image, go to media first, see if there's a folder that makes sense for your image to be in. Maybe you don't see any folder that makes sense. So you make a new folder, and you can do that right here in the pop-up. Let's call it Training 2. And then hit Save. Now we've got a Training 2 folder. We double click it to open it, and you can see there's no images in it whatsoever. And whatever image you're starting from, I'll just drag one from my desktop here, drag it in. This is a slideshow image from a website we're working on. And again, I could hit plus, see what my resolution is. This is a pretty large image. Let's insert it at 768, hit go, and there we go. We've got an image in the site, resized it for us, and it put it, it's going to use that path to that folder that we just made. So let's hit save, just double check our work. I go back, refresh the page, and here's our page with our new image. If I were to just copy that location and open another tab with it, we can see it's in media and it's in our new Training 2 folder, and it used the file name that we uploaded. File names can be changed. You can do that right, while editing a page. Even as you're uploading them, you can open media. Maybe I don't like the name of that file and the path of my website. I don't like slide 4. I want to call it, memorial, because this is a veterans memorial .jpg. Okay, that could be the name of my image. Hit save. When you do that, it's not going to break your links in your website. When you do that, it updates all of the links in every page. So don't worry too much about the names of images. You can rename them on the fly, and the page will still work. So that was item number 7, or actually number 6, which is the drag and drop method and why it's not great. The next topic is the image button on the toolbar and what it does. This confuses some people. you'll notice when you're using the editor here that there's a button that when you mouse over it says image, and it's kind of confusing because you click on it and it gives you the option to place a URL here for an image. We have seen some customers get confused. They'll go to the media library and copy the URL to an image, paste it here, and insert images that way. Obviously, that's less than ideal because it's not going to help you to resize the image, and it's a bunch of extra steps that you don't really need to do. So what is this for actually? Well, if I were to go to another website like EvoGov.com and I wanted to, I don't know, just copy the logo URL, okay? And if I were to just go to another tab, paste it, let's see what happens. There's the URL of our company. Well, I could actually insert this remotely. I could use the image button, put that URL in for the image, hit OK, and look at that. We are actually pulling the EvoGov logo from another website and showing it here in this website. That's really what that's for, installing, inserting remote images. But again, this can be troublesome because what if that site you're pulling it from, what if they change their logo and change the name of it, then this is going to break, right? This image is going to break. So is there a use for the image button? I can imagine a strange, scenario where you want to pull that from another site maybe, but because that link could break, I've never personally used it, and I don't think it makes sense to, especially when in a case like this, I could just download this logo locally. I could just, here I've got it on the screen. I can right click, save the image, put it in my downloads folder, come back to the page. Let me delete this one. And I want to keep it all local to my server so it never breaks. So I'll go into training 2. I'll open up my file manager and I'll go to downloads, and there's the image. Drag it in, it uploads. This is that logo image. Let's rename it and just call it EvoGov logo. I don't even have to have an extension on it. It's still going to work. Hit OK and then hit plus, and then notice here this is a small image, right? 434. So only, see how these are all grayed out? Only the options below 434 for width are going to work, right? So we can put in a 300 pixel wide insertion, do it, boom. Now that pulled from our own media library, and we don't need to worry about the other site breaking our image. So that is everything that you need to know about this little image button, what it does, and pretty much why not to use it, because it's probably going to cause problems long term if you're inserting images remotely. If you're using that and pasting URLs in that are local from the media library, that'll work, but it's a static URL and it's not going to be updated automatically like we saw when we renamed images elsewhere. So that's everything about that button. All right, we're on to number 8, which is adding hyperlinks to your images. So we're going to select our image here in the editor, and we now want to hyperlink that. So how do we do that? Well, we right click on it, we go to image properties, and then from here we see the source of where it's grabbing the image. We don't really care about that. The alt text of what is the image about, and then you'll see a link tab right up here. Here we can type in a URL. And now the target is important if you want the link to open in a new tab. If I were to hit save right now and you click the image, it'll open up this website, but it will replace the tab that we're in the browser. Maybe we want to open it in a new window or a new tab. So we can just say new window right here for the target. That'll open a new tab or a new window, depending on how you have your browser set up. We'll hit update, and then we'll come back, refresh the page. Let me refresh it real quick. There's our image, and you can see we've got the mouse pointer on it. If I click it, it opens a brand new tab, which I can pull the browser down here, and you can see it opened a new tab, and it opened up the website that we put in. So it's pretty easy to add hyperlinks to images. The next item on our list to cover is adding alt tags to images, and I sort of gave you a preview there of how to do that. Let's just hop back into it. So when you're editing the image, and you should do this with pretty much every image, right click, go to image properties, and you'll see alt tags here, an alternative text for the image. This is for folks that have difficulty with vision and they might be using a screen reader, which is audibly telling them about the content on the page. In this case, it's going to hit this image and just say memorial.jpg. And it might make more sense to say something like veterans, photo of veterans memorial with people. If I can spell. There we go. And then hit OK. And now their screen reader is going to have meaningful text instead of just memorial.jpg. Okay, so that's how you change the alt tag on an image. Last item on our list is making a pop-up, and I'll show you how to do that. We're going to go into our document here, and we're going to start by creating some text. Click here for a pop-up. Now we can replace this text later with a small thumbnail image to pop up to a larger version of the image. We'll start by going to the hyperlink button, and the kind of the target is going to be a pop-up. So we do that, and that's all we need to do to create the pop-up. Now you have a bunch of options here. You can make the pop-up window resizable. You can even limit the height and width of the pop-up window, and then the image that you're linking to will just scale to fit that pop-up window. But we need a URL to link to. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm just going to close that for a minute and then open the media library in a new tab. So I'm going to open that up in a new tab. Here's our media library, and if I go to the Training 2 folder, we've got that memorial photo that we've used previously. If I click the little chain link here, that's going to actually copy the link to that image, the raw image, to our clipboard. And so it did that. There's the link. And now I can go back to the page. I can go back to making a pop-up here. And the link that I'm going to link to, I just paste it right here. It'll automatically sense that it has HTTPS and change it. Target is going to be a pop-up. I'm going to leave all these variables just the way they are. Now we can update the page. Let's go take a look at it. I'll refresh it. We've just got our text link here. When I click it, look at this, I get a pop-up window. And it's full size. We could, again, set the size for the pop-up window to be anything we want. But it'll automatically size it to be the size of the image unless you actually set the height and width.